If you remember that random detail someone mentioned 3 months ago, you're not weird or obsessive. Psychologists have discovered that people with exceptional memory for personal details possess a rare form of emotional intelligence that most people will never develop. Let's talk about something that makes you feel both special and strange. You remember everything people tell you. Not just the big things, the small things. Someone mentions their dog's name once, and you remember it 6 months later. A coworker casually says they hate cilantro, and you remember when ordering lunch together. Your friend mentions their favorite childhood candy, and you bring it up years later. And when you do this, people react with shock. How do you remember that? They're amazed, sometimes uncomfortable, occasionally creeped out. But here's what psychologists are discovering. Your memory isn't just good, it's revealing something profound about how your brain processes human connection. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology shows that people who remember personal details aren't just gifted with better memory, they possess what's called relational memory, or social-emotional encoding. Your brain doesn't just store information, it stores it with emotional context attached. When someone tells you something, even something trivial, your brain recognizes it as meaningful because it came from a person you care about. You're not remembering facts, you're remembering people. Here's what separates you from everyone else. Most people listen to respond. You listen to understand. Neuroscience research shows that when most people are in conversation, their brain is split between processing what's being said and preparing what to say next. But your brain works differently. You're fully present, fully encoding, fully engaged. You're not waiting for your turn to talk. You're actually absorbing what the other person is saying. This creates deeper neural encoding, which is why you remember things others forget. Studies from cognitive psychology reveal something fascinating. Memory isn't actually about retention, it's about attention. Most people don't have bad memories, they have divided attention. They're physically present but mentally elsewhere. But you, when someone speaks, you give them your complete attention. You make eye contact, you process their words, you notice their emotional tone, you encode not just what they said, but how they said it and why it mattered to them. This level of attentiveness is rare, and it creates what psychologists call deep encoding, information stored with multiple memory anchors that make it nearly impossible to forget. Let's talk about why this happens. Research shows that people with high empathy naturally remember more personal details because their brain assigns emotional weight to information about others. When your friend mentions they're afraid of spiders, your brain doesn't just note it, it files it under important information about someone I care about. Your emotional system flags it as significant. For most people, that same information would be categorized as trivial small talk and immediately discarded. But your brain sees people as intrinsically valuable, so information about them becomes valuable too. Here's where it gets psychologically interesting. You remember details because you care about people as whole, complex individuals, not just as functional relationships. Most people remember what's useful to them, their boss's preferences, their client's needs, their partner's birthday. But you remember things that serve no practical purpose. You remember your mailman mentioned he likes fishing. You remember the barista said she's learning guitar. You remember these things because your brain doesn't categorize people as useful or not useful. It sees them all as worthy of attention and memory. Clinical psychologists have identified this trait as a marker of secure attachment and high emotional intelligence. People with anxious attachment often forget details because they're too focused on their own anxiety. People with avoidant attachment don't encode personal information deeply because they maintain emotional distance. But people with secure attachment, like you, naturally invest in others emotionally, which means investing cognitively too. You remember because you're connected. Let's address the social awkwardness this creates. When you reference something someone said months ago, they react with surprise, sometimes delight, sometimes suspicion. How do you remember that? They ask. And you can see the calculation in their eyes. Is this person amazing or creepy? Here's the truth. Their discomfort says more about them than you. They're uncomfortable because your memory reveals how little they remember about you. It exposes the one-sided nature of attention. You were listening, they were waiting to talk. Research from social psychology shows that people who remember personal details are consistently rated as more trustworthy, more caring, and better friends. Why? Because remembering is the ultimate form of validation. When you remember what someone told you, you're communicating. What you said mattered. You matter. I was listening. In a world where most people are desperate to be heard but feel invisible, your memory is a gift. You make people feel seen. But here's the challenge. Your memory can become a burden. You remember everything, including things people wish you'd forget. You remember the story they told you that contradicts the story they're telling now. You remember promises they didn't keep. You remember the person they used to be versus who they're pretending to be now. This puts you in an uncomfortable position. Do you mention the inconsistency or pretend you don't notice? Most of the time, you stay silent, but internally, you're tracking everything. Neuroscience reveals why you can't just forget like others do. Your brain has created what's called episodic memory integration. You don't just remember isolated facts, you remember entire contexts, conversations, and emotional atmospheres. When someone mentions their grandmother, you don't just remember her name. You remember the story they told about her, the emotion in their voice, the reason they brought her up. Your memories are rich, detailed, and interconnected. This is why you can recall things so vividly while others have no recollection. Let's talk about the loneliness of having this trait. You remember everything about people, but they rarely remember anything about you. You ask follow-up questions about things they mentioned weeks ago, but they forget what you told them yesterday. This creates an asymmetry in relationships that can feel isolating. You're investing mentally and emotionally in ways that aren't reciprocated. Over time, this can make you wonder, am I the only one who cares? The answer is no. You're just one of the few who cares enough to remember. Research shows that this trait often emerges in childhood, particularly in people who grew up having to read emotions carefully, children of volatile parents, empathetic kids in chaotic environments, people who learned early that paying attention to others was essential for emotional survival. Your memory might have started as a coping mechanism, but it evolved into a superpower. You learned to track people's moods, preferences, and patterns because it kept you safe. Now, as an adult, you can't turn it off, but it's made you exceptional at understanding people. Here's what makes you valuable. In an age of distraction, you offer presence. In an era of superficial connections, you offer depth. In a world where everyone wants to be heard but no one wants to listen, you actually listen. Psychological research shows that the #1 complaint in relationships, romantic, friendship, professional, is, they don't listen to me. But you do. You listen so well that you remember the details they've forgotten telling you. Studies from organizational psychology reveal that people with your memory trait make exceptional leaders, therapists, teachers, and caregivers. Why? Because you see people as individuals with unique stories, not as interchangeable roles. You remember that your employee's kid plays soccer, that your client prefers morning meetings, that your student is struggling with confidence. These details matter because they communicate that you see people as whole humans, not just as functions in your life. But let's be honest about the dark side. Sometimes you wish you could forget. You wish you didn't remember every careless comment, every broken promise, every inconsistency. You wish you could give people the fresh start that forgetting provides. But your brain doesn't work that way. You remember, and that memory becomes a catalog of who people really are versus who they claim to be. This can make you cynical if you're not careful. The truth about remembering everything is this: it's not a party trick or a quirk. It's a reflection of how much you value people. Your memory is an act of love. Every detail you remember is evidence that you were present, that you cared, that you paid attention when others were scrolling through their mental feeds. In a world that increasingly treats people as content to be consumed and forgotten, you treat them as stories worth remembering. So if you remember everything people tell you, stop apologizing for it. Stop acting like it's weird or obsessive. Your memory isn't a flaw. It's proof that you're emotionally intelligent, deeply empathetic, and genuinely present. You're not creepy for remembering. You're exceptional for caring enough to listen in the first place. Keep remembering. The world needs more people who pay attention. Comment, "I remember," if you've ever brought up something someone told you months ago and they looked at you like you're psychic. Let's find everyone with this superpower.